Hi, Vince. Hi.
Mr. President, it's been a while. It's so nice to talk to you again, sir. Thank you.
You are doing good, and I love you on television and on radio, but you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you. Hey,
Thank you, man.
Let's jump right into it. This weekend, you were in Richmond, had a great rally out in Richmond. And while you were there, you were talking about how you are going to make a big play for Virginia this year. This week, Super Tuesday. What's it going to take, do you think, for you to win big in Virginia?
Well, I think what you would do today is a lot different than what would have happened 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. I think I could have won Virginia previously, but now if you look at it, it's people are miserable. They're unhappy. You look at the migrants pouring into your cities and your areas and every place all over Virginia. It's a much different place than it was. And this is, I think I can say this for a lot of cities and states. It's a much different country than it was 2 or 3 years ago. With what's taken place on immigration on the border, with inflation having decimated the middle class and a lot of other people beyond middle class,
yes,
we're in a much different position than we were. And I think Virginia we have that down now, Vince, as a place that we're going to really go after. And I know the polls are very close to being even. And we are going to make a very heavy play for Virginia. I have a lot of different friends in Virginia, a lot of different properties in Virginia. We have a lot of things going on in Virginia. It's an incredible state, and I think it's ready to go Republican. They cannot stand the incompetence of watching what they're doing right now and putting up with it.
Well, what you're talking about with illegal immigration being a problem everywhere, it's definitely a problem in Virginia. Everyone's talking at some length about what's happening with Laken Riley in Georgia, the horrific murder there at the hands of an illegal immigrant. Yeah. And right here in Virginia, we've also been covering the sexual assault of a child at the hands of a Venezuelan illegal immigrant right in Virginia. This is a problem that's all over the place, and it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon.
It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. They're coming in from prisons and jails. They're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. That's a mental institution on steroids. And they're coming in as terrorists. They're coming into our country. The drugs, the drug dealers are pouring in. We spent a fortune on keeping drugs out. We get the best detection equipment you could get. And actually the best happens to be a certain type of German Shepherd, but we won't get into that. It's better than any, $2 million piece of equipment. It's incredible, but that's okay. But we spent a lot of time and effort and money keeping drugs out. And we did the best job in probably 40 years on that. We had the safest border we've had ever in our country on record. You know that. At the last, you go back 3 years ago, we had the best numbers ever recorded. And now you look at this. It's the exact opposite. We had remain in Mexico. We had things that nobody thought were possible. And now you take a look at what's happened. So I think it's a lot different now, the country, than it was 2 years ago.
Well, Fox News had a headline 2 weeks ago that said that during the Biden presidency so far, just based on the government numbers, we've had more illegals pour into our country than the population of 36 states. 36 states. Yep. So what does that mean? Why are they doing this to us?
Well, I actually think that the number right now is 15 million. You always hear 3 million, 2 million, 4 million. The number right now, I would say, as of this moment, is 15 million. I think by the end of his administration, when we get him out, if we don't get him out, the country is finished. By the end of his administration, I think it's going to be close to 20 million people, and that's bigger than almost all states. And this is the greatest insult. And you just asked a question: why are they doing this? And that's the one thing nobody can figure it. I guess the logical thing is that they want to get votes. They think these people are going to vote. I think, they cheat so much that, frankly, they don't need to do this because they cheat. But frankly, Vince, how can this be good politically? Everybody I know is up in arms. Democrats are going to be voting Republican. They're going to be voting for me, I can tell you, at levels that nobody's ever seen. And they're taking black jobs. They're taking Hispanic jobs. They're taking the jobs out of the black population at a level that nobody's ever seen before. The people that are hurt the most are African American and Hispanic, and also unions are being killed because union people, they're working for good wages. People that are hiring, using union wages, they're not going to agree to pay 4 or 5 times more money than, getting somebody at numbers that you wouldn't even believe, far below minimum wage because they're not going to pay. I mean, they're just not going to pay minimum wage. So that's the story. The black population is going to be decimated. Hispanic population, likewise. Nobody can believe it's happening. So many people ask me that question. You know, in business, you like to understand why somebody does something. You know, you want to understand your opposition. Nobody can understand. What are they doing? The only thing, you know, I guess they're doing it for votes, maybe. Maybe they think they're going to convert them. I don't know if you saw it. With the Hispanics, I'm now leading Biden. So if you're talking about Hispanic population, but by the way, this population isn't necessarily Hispanic. It's coming from all over the world. It's coming from Africa and Asia and the Middle East and all over the place.
Yes, that's right. In fact, the poll you're referencing is the New York Times this weekend. Their headline says that voters doubt Biden's leadership and favor Trump. Meanwhile, Fox, covering that detail you just mentioned, Trump leads Biden among Hispanics and registered voters overall. The survey data, very good for you. I know that there's always conversation of whether or not Biden is going to make it to the finish line this November. Is there a part of you that really hopes he does, given how easy a candidate he would be to beat, in your view?
Well, I just don't know. I mean, look, my attitude is whatever it is, it is. Do I think he's going to make it? Probably not. But everybody, as you know, you've said the same thing. Most people really disagree with us very vehemently. I tell you, the Democrats disagree with us. You know, the interesting thing is, and he's so bad, he's the worst president we've ever had, but he polls better than these other people, including Michelle Obama. He polls better than these other people. Explain that one. Now, maybe they need a little bit, you know, they have to get themselves going a little bit. But I looked at polling data, and under the polling data, Biden actually polls better than every single one of them.
Yeah, well, they released...
Which is pretty weird.
That is weird. And they released the results of his physical this past week. The White House seemed to rush to get him to a physical for some reason. And then the doctor said he, quote, continues to be fit for duty. And then the White House refused to put the doctor in front of the press for questions. Do you believe that assessment?
No, I don't believe that at all. I think he's in bad shape. I think he's cognitively impaired, and he's certainly physically impaired. He can't walk off a stage. He can't walk up a flight of stairs. That's, you know, 3 stairs. And he can never find his way. He can never find the stairs. He can't put 2 sentences together. And he's responsible for negotiating with Putin on nuclear weapons, right? You know, the whole thing is crazy. No, I personally don't think that he's going to make it. I may be wrong. A lot of people think that I'm absolutely wrong. I guess the odds are like 50-50. I don't see it.
When you say that, do you mean...
My attitude is if he does, he does. It is what it is.
Do you mean because of his health he won't make it?
Officially, I don't.
Do you mean because of his health he won't make it, or will the Democrats pull him? Because...
Well, I don't think he's the picture of. I don't think he's the picture of health. It's not because of his age. I know people in their 80s and 90s that are 100%. They're as good as they were 25 years before. And you know that they like to say the age. It's not because of the age, although, you know, there's like a 4-year difference between us.
Yes.
But I think they do the age to take shots at me, if you want to know the truth.
The split screen.
I know so many people. I know a man made all of it. Vince, I know a man, he fought all his life. He didn't do well. He became a very rich man from 80 to 90. And he was sharp as a tack, and still is, by the way. And it's not the age. There's something going on, in my opinion.
Well, I could see it last week on the television screens. When you were in Eagle Pass, Texas, and he was in Brownsville, the split screen made it super clear, actually, that there's something very different about both of you physically and in terms of just like how nimble you are. You can see it on the screen. And the White House thought that would be a good chance to kind of seize the spotlight away from you and your border trip. But I don't know. In the end, that split screen, do you think it served you well?
Well, I think so. I've gotten good reviews. I also went to the right location. You know, you want to go to the location where you have the problem, and they have had. I was with the governor of Texas, who's a great guy, Greg Abbott, and he's done a very good job on the border. Shouldn't have had to, because it's really a federal thing. And the federal government actually did the opposite. They cut down the walls, they cut down the wires, and, you know, let people pour in. No, I think it's one of the great issues of all time. If you happen to be running. It's a sad thing for the country. We have them pouring in from all over the world. They're coming in, and they are people that, as I said, they're coming from places. You don't want these people in our country. It's big danger, and bad things are going to happen, and we have to get them out. We have to deport them.
Yes.
It's going to be a mass deportation. We have to get him out.
You mentioned election rigging earlier in our conversation, and I want to focus on that for just a moment because the left regularly denounces you for discussing election rigging. But as we speak, we've got a number of Democrat-run states who are literally trying to remove your name from the ballot, which I think is actually ballot rigging in plain daylight. We are recording this conversation just so people know. And by the time you hear it, the Supreme Court may actually have released an opinion on it. There's some expectation that on Monday that'll happen. But what is that, if not explicitly rigging ballots, Mr. President?
Well, they're really rigging an election because they're trying to take somebody off that's leading both in the Republican primary, beating Nikki Haley like 10-1, and she's gone. I mean, she's gone. And Biden, I'm beating him in every poll, even the New York Times poll today. Wall Street Journal came out with a poll I'm winning too, and every poll I'm beating him. And how do you take that person off the ballot? I think that would, it's one thing, leave him the ballot, let him win or lose.
Right.
But how do you take a person like that off? That doesn't sound very democratic to me. Actually, the truth is, Biden, they like to play this whole thing with threat to democracy. He is a threat to democracy. He really is. When they go after their opponents, when they have their DOJ and everything go after the opponents, and don't forget, the DOJ uses Fani. They use all these other people around. The local DAs and the local attorney generals, et cetera, But they did you see where Fani, and you're supposed to pronounce it Fani, very fancy, but Fani from Georgia, she's out, and they spent a lot of time, her and her lover, they spent a lot of time in the DOJ or in the White House in Washington about my case. Well, they're just doing that. All that is election rigging. It's a disgrace. And I can't imagine they could allow that case to go on.
Well, that relationship between her and Nathan Wade is the sloppiest thing I've ever seen. Can you imagine? I mean, were you surprised by how good your fortune has been in that case?
Well, I don't know. Let me tell you about it sometime later. That's a case that should not happen.
Yeah.
First of all, the phone call was absolutely perfect. I'm sure you listened to it. That was a perfect phone call. That was a complaint that, in my opinion, the election was rigged in Georgia and in a lot of other states too, by the way. And it was. I've proven to be right on that stuff. It was. But, it was a perfect phone call. Everything was good. You have a lot of great patriots that were charged with things, things that they've done from Thomas Jefferson on, the slates and all of the different things that they talk about.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace. And she turned out to be totally crooked. And her boyfriend, who had no experience, got paid almost $1 million. And then they went on trips all over the place. And then she lied. Obviously, she lied about cash because now she said, oh, wait, the money I paid him is using, and we're taking beautiful cruises all over the place. So they made up a story about she paid him in cash. She didn't pay him in cash. And if she did, she'd have a bigger problem because she's going to have to say, where did that cash come from?
It's over the top. And speaking of people being arrested and charged, I don't know if you saw, but a journalist for The Blaze called Steve Baker was just arrested on Friday by the Biden administration. He was arrested for covering January 6, 2021. He was in the Capitol building. He just covered the events. And they've charged him now. He told me, I talked to him Thursday, he told me that he didn't used to be a Trump supporter, but given everything he's seen, he is now. And he says that he's expecting, because you've mentioned it in public, that he could get a pardon when you return to the presidency. How soon do you think something like that would happen?
Well, if you know him and if you respect him and like him, he's got a pretty good chance because I'll be honest with you, you have been incredible on this thing. You get it. And you're not like one way or the other. You're about fairness. So tell me about, is he a conservative writer?
He's a conservative writer, but he's a journalist, just a guy who's reporting the facts for The Blaze, who was covering the events inside the Capitol building, and now he's been hit with charges by the Biden administration. They just perp walked him on Friday in handcuffs.
Well, it has not gotten that much publicity, and probably Biden doesn't want that much publicity on it, but it hasn't gotten that much publicity. That's terrible. That's a terrible thing. Well, there is a threat to democracy. They're doing it all over the place. Look at Portland. They've ripped down the city. They've ripped it to pieces, and nothing happens. And yet you have hostages that are right now on J6 who went in. They didn't have guns. The only gun was the cop shooting Ashley. It was so terrible. The whole thing was so terrible. They didn't have guns. That was a protest about a rigged election. It is so unfair what's happened in our country. our country has really changed a lot in so many different ways. I'll take a look at his situation. Absolutely, if he's an innocent person, because those people have been really mistreated and really badly mistreated.
Very much so. I know you're short on time, so I'll make the last two here quick. Senator Mitch McConnell announced this week that he's stepping down in November. What do you make of the timing of this? He's announcing it now. He's saying he's stepping down in November. And do you have somebody who you'd prefer to replace him?
Well, it's interesting. I got endorsed by Cornyn and Thune and John Thune, and I've got endorsed by a lot of people in the last couple of weeks. And, they see what's going on, obviously, with the election. We're in the election now. We're right in the middle of election season.
Right.
By the way, these trials, these fake trials, they should not be allowed to go on because there's very strong, DOJ statements and representations that you don't do trials during the middle of an election.
Yeah.
And they should not be allowed to even think about doing them. And they're all fake to start off with. It's all fake stuff. So we'll see how that all turns out. We get some interesting things. But no, he's retiring, and a lot of people won't be unhappy.
A lot of people won't be unhappy. And then finally, in terms of names, your running mate, I've been following this really closely. In early January, you told Brett Baer that you knew who it was going to be. And then you talked to Laura Ingraham and you said, well, there's a short list. It includes a bunch of people we know. What's actually going on here? Do you know who your running mate will be, or are you just trying to keep us in suspense? What's happening there?
So generically speaking, so do I know who it's going to be? I have a group of people that I like a lot. It could be somebody in that group. It could be a lot. I'm in zero rush to do that. I just don't. I'm not in a rush to do it. I'm not in a rush to announce it, and it's never made much of a difference. I mean, you know the history of elections. I must study it. Actually, probably more than I do, better than I do. I'm not in a real rush to do it, but it's never really made. Incredibly, actually, Sarah Palin helped a lot, and then they, went out of their way to hurt her, and that was people within the Bush group. They went out of their way to, and the McCain group. They went out of their way to hurt her, and what they did was incredible. But when she first came out, she had actually a very positive impact. And then they, did things that were, I think, very inappropriate because I think she happens to be a very good woman. I think that it won't make that much of a difference, but we have a lot of good people that it could be. And I do have my eyes on one or two or three in particular, but subject to change. I'm just not in a hurry to do that.
All right, Mr. President, thank you very much for your time today, and I appreciate you talking to the audience at WMAL.
Well, thank you very much, and you do a great job, Vincent. I look forward to talking again.
Okay, I can't wait. I hope that happens soon. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. Goodbye, Vince.